Hello and welcome everyone to another alternate media special. This will be the first in a long series, hopefully, of many interviews. Today I am joined by a good friend of mine, Mr. Rob Blackwell. We have played music together. We've done several Bible studies together. I'm probably not going to be in the frame much for this because we're interviewing my friend.
Because I have a big head. I have a helmet for a head.
So, I guess really to jump right in, one of the interesting things that I always like to bring up, because this was how I was introduced to you, is your prowess as a musician and kind of the journey that you had coming through the world of music and Christian music. And
Journey is an interesting term.
Right. So, my first question is first of all, how did you come to faith? Kind of what's...
Sure. So, I didn't go to church as a kid. We never went to church. And I met a guy who claimed that he was a Christian in high school, and started doing a little research and saw that, from what I could tell, he was actually trying to do the right things.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. And so I was like, well, he's a smart guy. And there was something different about him. And so I said, okay, well, I'll go to church with you. No worries. So my 16th birthday, the weekend after, I actually drove to a church 45 minutes away and went to church for the first time ever.
Wow.
And I had to know, man. You know what I'm saying? I had all these questions and had heard about, Jesus growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Had heard, different things, but never heard firsthand, never heard from someone who actually followed him,
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to know, man. So anyway.
Yeah, it was just curiosity in the teenage years.
Yeah, and I mean that's what I initially attributed it to. I mean, I remember being an 8-year-old and walking in the grocery store with my mom, and I'm not going to say audibly hearing a voice like over the loudspeakers, but as an 8-year-old, hit with at least the theme of, "Hey, are you ready? Are you ready for me?"
Right.
And I remember answering out loud, "I'm not ready. I don't know anything about you."
Right.
Yeah. And that was 8 years old. So fast forward 8 years, I've been kind of like, who is this? I never knew anyone who really followed him.
Yeah.
And so to get to know someone who actually strived to follow Messiah was like, okay, I'm all ears.
The humbling experience almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's how it was. And then going from there, just kind of course, immediately dropped into the music.
Course.
I'm not trying to talk bad about any, organization or anything, but I mean, it's like as soon as they see something talent-wise, it's like, right in, focus, laser beam, and so started doing that pretty much right away.
Right, so joining like church worship bands and stuff, just kind of jumped in.
Which is kind of scary.
A little bit.
Like 16 years old, never been to church, and within 2 months, I'm playing in front of 600-700 people.
That's
what is that?
That's quite a crowd, especially if you, as musicians, you'd never know it to see us perform, but most of us have horrible stage fright.
Oh, and presence and everything else. I had no business being in front of anyone.
Right.
At that point, not only faith-wise, but performance-wise. Just no bit, but, as I'm sure most people can attest to in the Christian world, you're thrown in, man. It's trial by fire, and you roll.
Absolutely.
You just do what you got to do. So I would say that was the biggest thing, and the biggest thing I guess that kept me in would be probably at that point in my life the music.
Okay.
It kind of kept me involved.
So that anchored you to the faith in a way.
Yep.
Okay. So that's where your faith began. Now, where has the faith path taken you from there till now? Have you seen any changes philosophically, theologically,
Boys and girls, this is going to be a long show. So yes, of course. And I think most people, if they're intellectually honest about their walk, they will answer that question in the affirmative. Like
it's part of growth.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to say, there's a superhero who was, okay, well, he actually lived a life. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? He wasn't Clark Kent.
Right, right.
And so, okay, well, what does that look like? And so when you actually start looking at that and studying like Greek mythology and stuff, I found very big similarities mm-hmm. to kind of what was being taught with that versus kind of, there was this weird mix.
Yeah.
There was this huge, just cornucopia of, hey, this, and that sounds fun, and okay, what about this?
Kind of like a cosmopolitan Christianity.
It was very cosmopolitan, and I think that's probably Christianity as a whole in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
It was finding its way amongst a generation that, 90s kids were very, hey, don't tell me anything about what to do. Right. You don't tell me what to do.
Right.
And I think a lot of kids are like that now, except for sources they trust.
Of course.
And then they're all in, you know, and but long story short, back then, no one, you don't tell me what to do. What are you talking about? And so, how does that look in a Christianity that had just come out of the Jesus freak movement?
Right.
That had just come out of, hey, love wins all. Even hippie love. What?
Right. Yeah.
What does that really look like? And so, I think I had big time, not only questions, but a lot of those questions were answered.
So you came up kind of in the listen to this sermon and get a free pizza.
Yes. Also, the Left Behind series was really big.
Yep.
Rick Warren's purpose-driven series was the catalyst for normative mainstream Christianity at the time. It's the thing that brought it to the masses, basically. And so, that's the era that I kind of started trying to ground in some kind of faith. Changes. The first church I ever went to was a downtown Baptist church.
Yep.
And I kid you not, dead of winter, it's February, I'm in the parking lot, in the dirt parking lot, walking down the sidewalk, and I've got a shirt with a tie on. My shirt's untucked. I kid you not. Boy, you need to tuck that. My coat's on, but it's open. Boy, you need to tuck that shirt in. We have a dress code here.
Mm-hmm. Baptist man.
This person had never seen me before. Number one. Number two, never knew my backstory, that I had never set foot in a church. I'd never been inside a church.
Wow. Yeah, so that's... What a welcome.
To someone who was of the, don't tell me what to do. You know? And so, little things like that kind of gave me... And it's easy to write that off and say, well, I never went back to... No. You got to be bigger than that.
Yeah.
Right? And so I was like, dude, I just drove 45 minutes. I'm not trying to sound bigger than I am, but what I'm doing is actually pretty heroic. Mm-hmm. What I'm doing is actually pretty I'm facing my fear. I'm walking into this church where I know one person, right. And I don't know if I'll see them. I hope I do, but I don't know if I will, And so, I made a decision then, hey, if I walk alone, I walk. I'm going to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, having said that, that has been the static, I think, in my relationship. That has been the constant is this thing of this is my faith.
Mm-hmm.
This is my relationship. I know this not because of head knowledge, but because of a relationship and because of how real he's been to me.
Yeah.
Even though I was a statistic. I mean, they write research papers about the kind of upbringing I had.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, you can go on Google Maps right now, and it's hard to find the place I grew up. Like,
so really,
I mean, folks like me, kids like me, lived in irrelevance.
Kind of just nowhere on the map. Kind of,
no future.
It's those people we pass by every day and don't think twice about because
I mean, like, squeaking out an existence or something is a good life, and,
right?
And I'm not saying it's not, but what I am saying is, there was nothing special about me,
right?
And the creator of the universe reached his hand out and said, "I'm your father.
I have a purpose for you.
I have a purpose for you." And it's not this. It's not this. Granted, there's nothing I can't turn into good coming from this, but I have a better way for you. And so when I started seeing that, I always had questions, but kind of went through. My wife and I started reading Exodus together through a homeschool program that we're in.
Awesome.
We started reading Exodus 20 together, and because the kids had to learn it via a song.
Right. Shout out homeschoolers.
Homeschoolers! I wasn't homeschooled, but I homeschooled my kids. So.
Right.
So anyway, they're homeschool immigrants.
Right. Yeah. First generation.
They're first generations. So it's awesome. In doing that, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, hold on. Why don't we do that?
Right. And that's one of those where, like, the common answer that you get is that, well, the Sabbath is Sunday now. But you come up with problems because in Exodus, in that passage, it says that this is eternal. And it doesn't really leave room for change.
And it's for all your generations, man.
That's,
yeah. And well, you're not Jewish. Well, wait a second. No, like, I'm not? Like...
Right.
Like, what does that mean? And so in going through that, my wife and I said, well, look, we probably need to research this. And so we came up with, Sunday's the Sabbath. Okay, well, then why are pastors working 12, 14-hour days on Sundays? Mm-hmm. Like, that doesn't sound like a Sabbath to me because you're not supposed to work.
That's the job they get paid for.
That's exactly right. And, dude, as a worship leader, like, vocationally speaking, Sundays, I'm on, man.
Yeah.
It's 2, sometimes 3 services and at least a rehearsal, And then, like today was, another, was a funeral, so there was something else I had to do, and those are part of my vocational responsibility.
It's a job.
It's
work.
At that part, it's absolutely work. And so I'm like, wait a second, Sunday doesn't make any sense here. Like, this doesn't make any sense. And so in doing that, we found out, of course, Sunday Sabbath is kind of a man-made thing, and more specifically a Catholic derivative, if you will. And so we said, well, what if we went further back? Like, this wasn't a Catholic text.
Right.
So what is it? Okay, well, it's a Hebrew text. Okay, well, what do the Jews do?
Right.
And did you start asking that question?
you get some vitriol for sure.
It's nuts, man. I don't understand. Like, you want to talk about systemic whatever. Like, the fact that the church has something against the Jews. And that goes way deep.
There's the way I've phrased it sometimes is that it's almost unconscious.
I think so.
There's a lot of people, because when you say that, and a lot of my listeners and viewers are going to hear us say that, and their initial thought is, well, I love the Jewish people. I love Israel. I support Israel, and it's one of those where it's like that's true, and in a conscious way, at the very front of your mind, you understand that, but some of the doctrines that you hold pretty near and dear, if they're challenged on a long enough string of questions, you're going to find yourself thinking anti-Semitic thoughts in order to defend those doctrines.
You are. And, even so much as, in some denominations, there used to be teachings, I don't know about now, but I know used to be teachings of, well, hey, they killed Jesus. Like,
right.
I don't really trust them.
That's still somewhat common depending on the denomination.
Yeah,
I find more often that Catholics and more from the high church, they tend to be more given to that ideology that, well, they killed Jesus, so that's why they're the bad guys.
Yeah, and so it's just like, that doesn't make any sense. Like there's just something that's like, no, that's a little off. There's something a little off about that. Let's dive in. So once we just said, you know what, like the more we research about Sabbath, the more we are inclined to keep it. And I said, okay, well, what else?
Right.
Like, what else are we doing that probably is not really something we're supposed to be doing? So we started looking and we found all sorts of things. And so we decided to take everything we believed and put it on a shelf, just like,
bookshelf.
We just shelved everything, man. And we slowly started taking things down.
And examine.
If they held water, like Thanksgiving, we still celebrate Thanksgiving because, yeah, it's a state thing, and some people say, well, it's pagan. I don't see any of that. I am thankful to God for what He's done in my life, and I'm going to celebrate that with brothers and sisters. I see no problem with that.
Right, and even on the subject of the holidays with Thanksgiving in particular, my understanding from the history that I've done on it is actually it was initially a Sukkot celebration. Because the Puritans were more or less, they maintained a lot of the biblical festivals and a lot of the Sabbatarian ideologies, and so the only reason it's not on Sukkot today is because when the government got a hold of it, they set a specific date for it.
Sure.
Or a specific time.
Yeah, that's right. So in going through some of that, which is really interesting, I've kind of touched on a little bit of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to dive in a little bit more, but we just really started saying, okay, well, look, we've got this nominal thing going on with Christianity, and look, by the world standards, like me being a worship leader and whatever, like, dude, we're good,
right?
But that's not good enough. Not for me. Because I got to a point too where like what other people thought about me, and this kind of plays into the music thing. I wrote songs for other people in my head for so long, like, this song has to be able to be sold, and this song has to be able to be played live, and thousands of people love it and stuff. And that was all Boulder Dash, man. I mean, it was all stuff like, that stuff does matter to some extent, but the way and how I do things, I'm not in front of 20,000 people a night. It doesn't matter, man. And so, I had to really take a step back and say, look, of course I want you to like me. I think everyone wants someone they're trying to get to like them.
Yeah.
Or to like their art, or to like their, whatever, their vocation or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's really none of my business. Like, it's, I can put a song out or whatever, and you may be like, that's cool, man. But like, as a friend, like, you're my buddy. I'd rather you be my buddy than like my music.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like, okay, well, what's the most important? So we started taking that approach too with our faith. Like, I don't really care what you think. Like, I have to live with this faith.
Right.
And we're taught to evangelize and do this other stuff so much that we lose sight of
self-care.
Right? And like, I'm not trying to get old Joel Osteen on you, but like, you have to answer those questions and have to be okay with yourself. And some people are like, that's kind of narcissistic. Well, it's at the end of the day, when I take that passage, when I fall into sleep and take that passage wherever it leads, I'm going there alone, man.
Right. If you think about it in terms almost of like a plane that's in distress, and the oxygen masks come down. And what's the procedure that you go through? Well, you put yours on first, because if you're not good to go, you're probably not going to be much help to anybody else.
And you're someone else's problem.
Yes.
See, and that's the big thing I don't think people really realize. At that point, when I'm burnt out, or when I'm severely questioning my faith, or when I'm cussing God out or whatever, like, dude, I'm someone else's problem now.
Yeah.
Like, that's a pastor's problem now.
Yeah, right.
That's now a congregation's problem if I have to get fired because I say something on stage I shouldn't. Right. Like, now I got a whole congregation of people that don't have a music minister that they count on every week. So, it's a thing where I really had to focus on, okay, God, it's me and you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do what you say. Wait a second. You had Moses write it down for me.
Yeah.
Like, let's start there. So that's kind of the full circle that we came to. And dude, we're still there. We're still emptying and loading up the shelf, man.
Faith is too broad of a subject to get that all down in just a couple of years.
I think so.
So I guess to kind of transition a little bit from this, how has the faith walk affected your music? Because you write music.
Yeah.
So how has that affected? Has the nature of your music writing changed as your journey has progressed?
Yeah, a little bit. I would say, gosh, that's a great question. You're really good at this. I would say maturing. Some people attribute it to age. Some people attribute it to being on the road for a long time, whatever. I think your music ages with you, but I think it's for different reasons. And I would say for me, the foundation of that has been my faith, and the foundation of that has been, well, like, what am I doing about this? Because when you lie down, when you rise,
mm-hmm.
when you're on the road, that's how we try to do this thing.
Right.
And of course we're not perfect at it. And it's a huge growing process. But yeah, that has absolutely affected how I write music. I'm not trying to write the clappy, like sing-song stuff nearly as much anymore. As a matter of fact, I think we shared this right before we came on here. I'm writing a kids record right now.
Right?
Like, dude, my kids, man. Like, and again, oh, well, you're dad. Yes, absolutely. But it's so much deeper than that.
Kids need music.
They absolutely need music.
I mean, I know for me, I realized that I was into music as a child.
That's right.
That was an early calling in my life.
And how'd you learn things? Through
music. It's the language that I naturally speak as a musician.
And isn't it funny that little Jewish children in the Orthodox community learn their Torah by doing what?
By singing. It's.
And so like you start realizing that yes, music, it's this introspective thing or whatever, but how I'm really going to leave a legacy
mm-hmm.
with music is actually looking at like the next generation. Like what are they doing? I'm not planning on hundreds of thousands of people hearing my stuff anymore. I'm planning on my children.
Right.
Hearing my stuff. I'm planning on releasing stuff for maybe my church. I'm planning on, I've done a series of videos, just me and acoustic guitar, through the lockdown stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I've got 4 or 5 churches across the nation that, that's what they use because they don't have a worship leader.
Right.
Like, that's the kind of stuff that, like, yes, that's the stuff that matters now. It's not the big stages or buses.
It's really helping where the help is actually needed.
Yes. Well, and that's so key, man. That's another big thing I learned in my faith. Like, just because you think you want to help somewhere doesn't mean that that's needed.
Right.
Like, okay, your computer gets broken, right, or something, and you're like, hey, Rob, I need you to come help me with my computer. And I come and, like, clean your kitchen.
Yeah. It's a nice gesture. I appreciate it, but
that's not what I needed.
That's not what I needed from you.
Like I've got a carotid artery injury, and you stick a Band-Aid on my ear.
Yeah. Right, right.
It doesn't matter, man, And so like, okay, well, what is needed? Cool. Well, maybe I can use my stuff there. And I think that is a huge testament of what my wife and I are actually calling becoming disciples.
Right.
If you're really looking at what we're doing, I think it's what the church has tried to hit a mark with discipleship, just not really known how to do it. And it's as simple as literally just reading the word and doing that.
Right.
If it applies to you, you do it.
Right. That's one of those things that I've commented before. Christianity, in a lot of ways, in some denominations, presents this idea of God's will for your life as though it's like this overarching plan of like what in the pagan world they call destiny. When really God's will is the commandments He's written in the Bible, and as long as you're doing that, then He's going to put you where He needs you.
And he's going to, and I mean, maybe not audibly, that's a huge thing of contention. I don't know. That he's
Right.
never spoken to me like, "Hey, Rob, you need to," blah, 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 blah. He's never done that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he couldn't. I don't know. I just don't know it. But what I do know is that he's given me a brain and a set of skills that when a need arises, I'm able to meet that need.
Right.
And why? Well, because I've learned how to walk humbly. I'm not sitting here saying I'm the most humble. Look at me.
Right.
But I have learned that, like, it's not, even with the song stuff, like, dude, it's just not about me at all.
So you mentioned being on the road.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to get into that a little bit.
Oh, boy.
Because you've played for and with some pretty noteworthy Christian artists.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the, because I don't think I'm even aware of the whole list.
Oh, gosh. I can't remember the whole list now. I've opened up for or shared the stage with, if you want to call it that. Oh gosh, Building 429, Decipher Down.
Right.
Band called FFH we played with in Wilmington. Worship band called Fee.
Fee. Wow. Yeah, that's one that people are going to know. Yeah.
Back in the day. Played with them in Richmond. Gosh. Who else? It's been a long time, man.
So you've got quite a resume on that front. So
Yeah.
got to ask a quick
been a long
question
time.
since you had a pretty intimate life in CCM, Christian contemporary music. Who are some of your favorite Christian contemporary artists?
Oh gosh. That's a really tough one. Because I've met a lot of them.
Right.
Like on a,
So you know them personally, and that can change things.
Absolutely, it changes a lot. Musically, Caedmon's Call.
Yeah.
I just loved production value and stuff from those cats. They're raging Calvinists, I believe.
Gotcha.
Which is, whatever.
Yeah.
I say raging Calvin. I use that as I don't mean that derogatory.
No. Obviously, there are fundamental disagreements you and I would have with Calvinism.
Sure, and whatever. Okay. And it doesn't matter to them, so whatever.
Right.
I would say my favorite CCM artist, and I think the people that probably get it the most, and this is me talking, would be Shane and Shane.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know them. I've met them a couple times, but I've never like hung out with them, if you want to call it that. But I will tell you, I just think they get it. I think their music, they had the worship initiative a few years back where they recorded just a ton of other worship songs, and just gave stuff away, and a lot of their concerts are free.
Yeah.
And so I think they kind of.
Especially the free concert thing in the world of Christian music, I appreciate that because it's almost and it's music, so it's not like you're giving something material, but you're giving something that is immaterial, and it is still something, and so
valuable.
It is a form of charity in some ways.
Yep.
So I've always felt a little iffy about like Christian artists that refuse to do any kind of a charitable show at any point.
I mean, that's, say what you want to about Carmen, who just passed, but like, dude played nothing but free shows, man.
Right. Man, that takes me back.
I mean, way back, right? but it's like, again, it's really tough because you've got the moniker of this is my vocation,
mm-hmm.
okay? And you have people look at this like church.
Yeah.
Because they do.
Yeah.
And then you got the thing of, now, people, I don't want to call it idolize, but they come close.
Right.
To idolizing these artists. And it's just like, it's just weird. CCM has always, to me, been a weird, ball of just kind of chaos.
Yeah.
For that reason. you've got this built-in fan base that are going to church and whatever, listening to K-Love and stuff, but you've also got this, well, I can't approach them because I'll tell you,
it's the celebrity status.
I'll tell you, played a show that included the headliner was Mercy Me in Front Royal, Virginia, a long time ago, and got to meet Bart Millard and talk to him, and kind of similar stories. And that dude was so nice, man. Like straight up, his dad passed away from cancer, and so we had stuff in common, and he was very, very, very nice. He's probably met 1,000 people like me, and that's cool. But he actually took time and talked to me, which is cool, so things like that. The guys that you would talk to and like you'd hand a CD to because you're a entrepreneurial artist, and they would literally just throw it in the garbage can and laugh behind your back.
Wow.
I mean, you saw a lot of that, which whatever, but it's this weird, and it's kind of why I didn't want to go through a lot of that. Was because number one, I never got like the shot on my own that I was seeking. I always did with others, and then whatever, And so, but the other portion of that was I never wanted to be in that like chaotic. It just didn't feel right.
It seems almost like a fine line to have to walk. To be an example, to kind of to in a way almost own the celebrity status, to be a positive example for young kids who do look up to you, but also not fall so deep into it that you end up no different from secular celebrities.
And being really young in the faith too. I mean, let's just call that what it is. At 19, 20 years old, I'm 4 years in.
Right.
Having spent the majority of that in college. Like in a 4-year secular, like, University of North Carolina system school. Like, whoa, that's crazy, And so, I had problems with bands that had image consultants. Like, I had problems with that. And most people were like, oh, well, that's terrible. Well, it's actually not. You're signed to a major record label.
Right.
You're selling hundreds of thousands of CDs. You're number one on the charts, with Christian music, breaking all sorts of records.
Right.
Right? Like, business will tell you need an image consultant.
Yeah.
That image consultant is telling you to buy women's jeans because they look better on you. That's weird to me.
You're right.
But, the start of the skinny jean movement was that very thing.
That's, yep.
And it's just like, okay, well, again, I'm not knocking it now. I was then, absolutely. But I'm not knocking it now because, vocationally, that's what you do.
Right.
And so I don't fault anybody for that now. But I do say, like why are you doing what you're doing? And if it's for a paycheck, dude, just be honest.
Right. And I
just own it.
I think in a lot of ways that's the case for some of them. We've seen, how many recent Christian artists come out and having lost their faith now. I think the most recent one was what was it, Sanctus Real?
I don't know.
One of the I don't know if it was Sanctus Real. I do
know that we played a show. We played 2 shows with those guys in Greensboro. They were always top notch. Like we had a great time. Solid guys.
There was a recent one. I don't remember the band off the top of my head, but he's come out as an atheist now, and he received so much backlash from Christianity for it, and I think that has its own level of problems. It's like, look, the man has questions.
Yeah.
Talk him through it,
or like man up and ask him.
Yeah.
Like, why?
But
what's up?
I think the switch side to that though is that you put him in a status where he had so much influence as a young believer in the faith, where he didn't really have roots, and I think that kind of lended.
And the biggest reason for that, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Oh, you're good.
the biggest reason I think for that is, all of these, with the exception of maybe one or two, all of these major Christian record labels are all owned by major, huge secular conglomerates.
So at the top, it's not really Christian. The top of that pyramid is not.
Dude, the top, like, 5 or 6 layers down aren't.
Wow.
I mean, like, and the record label may be ran by Christians, but their distribution stuff, that may not be. They may be in Lifeway or whatever.
So it's just business, really, at the end of the day, business with a mask on.
Well, and so, like, that's where you have to, like, disseminate. Okay, well, are we vocational?
Right.
Are we ministry? Are we both? What does that look like? And again, I'm okay. Like, people have such a problem with Joel Osteen. I have big problems as well.
Right.
Massive. But for me, it's and this is just me talking. I'm irrelevant, whatever. But if you were to say, look, I'm a Christian, I'm a motivational speaker who believes that God gives me the power to do these things, and that's how he presented himself, I'd say, brother, go sell your books. Like, go on. It's great. But to be the pastor of a massive, beehive,
right.
Right. Like, it's this hive mentality. Like, I that's what I have a problem with. And it's not necessarily him, although he's bought into it. Everyone has a choice to, but it's the system. Right. It's the system I have a problem with. Artists like Keith Green totally bucked that system. Like, that dude would get out there and sell out a show and, like, wouldn't touch his piano. He'd just give the gospel for an hour and a half.
You know what?
That's the kind of people I want to look up to and say, that. Yeah. Not just because, you play some funky chord, Right. And so that's going back. I love CCM music because I think they try. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of them could try a lot harder.
Well, we're all human in that aspect.
Amen.
One question, because we brought up Carmen. That took me way back. I told my mom the other day, I feel like I grew up in the golden age of Christian music.
You did, dude.
Where because the early '90s, it was just coming out of that phase where it was terrible, and so from the early '90s all the way through 2010 period, like, it was really good, and you saw the evolution and everything. We were talking about Ray Boltz, who
Yeah.
Ray Boltz as a lyricist, I think was just incredibly influential. The song "Watch the Lamb" specifically, that's one that I always point out as just being iconic, because how many other artists think, oh yeah, there was that guy who had to carry the cross for Jesus. What did that day look like to him? And then write a song based on that.
Or like Bebo Norman.
Right.
Writing, from the perspective of the hammer.
Yes. It's iconic perspective on the gospel that I think I don't see as much of that personally come out in Christian music anymore. You get every now and then you get that golden artist that they do and they get it, but it's not as prominent in CCM now. Is that something that you have seen kind of?
So when I was coming up in it, the unwritten rule was it was 5 years behind.
Right.
It was 5 years behind whatever trend was ongoing. So like now the sleepy singer-songwriter thing is kind of coming back into play.
Yeah.
Kind of on a more electronic level.
Yeah.
Digital level. So back in the day, it'd be like, okay, well, in like 2024, 25, that's going to be the big thing in Christian music. That gap has shrunk pretty hard now.
Right.
Because they've thrown a lot of money at it.
Gotcha.
And so a lot of producers, because there's good money in Christian music.
For sure.
But believe it or not, you're going to flip when you hear this. I don't know about today, but I know 10 years ago, Christian music accounted for 13% of all record sales in the world.
Wow.
You know what percentage like CCM, like K-Love was of that?
What?
It was like 10% of that.
Wow.
You know what the most massive Christian music sales-wise was? Southern Gospel.
Are you serious?
Those cats crush. Those cats will sell 500,000 records out of their bus in a heartbeat.
So like some of the old school Clay Cross.
That's it,
kind of, man.
And he's still working it too. He's still rolling.
Oh yeah. You know, what I respect about him personally is like he's one of those that came out as being honest in the struggles that he had. I remember when it blew up all over the Christian music world that he had a porn problem.
Yeah.
Right? But he dealt with it. He owned it, dealt with it.
He was
and
you know, like, hey, I struggle. Like,
right.
You know, like, and I think that's really key because, you know, most people are looked at as idols. They're looked at as these, like, you know, they're one level below Billy Graham.
Right.
They're deacons of Billy Graham, right? As far as like their stature. And you can't do that to people. Like, you can't do that to people. Like, if you really enjoy their art, that's one thing, and that's very cool. And I'm not knocking that. You can like whoever you want to. It's none of my concern.
Right.
But don't idolize them. And you shouldn't do that second. I mean, even if an atheist is watching this, if an agnostic is watching this, don't idolize, because they're eventually going to do something you don't like.
Right.
I mean, that's just what it is, you know? And so, yeah, I mad respect to people that are like, yeah, I got a problem.
Right.
I need help.
So you have seen then, you've seen kind of a shift and the movement and the evolution almost of the Christian contemporary music world.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think it's affected the church? Do you think it's been a more positive or negative effect on the church?
Negative.
Negative, really. In what ways? Could it, like, expound on that?
Sure. So, I mean, and you and I have had this conversation before about culture. I mean, what's the root word of culture?
Cult.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to literally make, you know, your whole goal is this seeker-friendly, you know, using a term from back in the day, this seeker-friendly, like, oh, we have to make music that caters to fill in the blank so that they'll then come to our church. Okay?
Right.
And I get that. I do it every week. You know, if I'm sitting there like, okay, let's, you know, open up your hymn books and turn to hymn number 619. And
you already lost half of them.
but I got half of them back.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, right?
There's a give and take there between generations.
There absolutely is. And so, like, it's like, okay, well, you know, and so massaging that is kind of its own thing. You know, but towards the culture thing, if you're trying to appease the culture, you're going to land in sin. Because what appeases this culture is sin.
Right.
Sin is what fuels the monetization of this culture. It just is what it is, man. And so, and it's always been that way.
Yeah.
We just call it different things. We just justify it differently now. Well, there might be some more people that come in our church, you know, if we play this kind of music. I doubt it.
So would you say kind of the evolution of the Christian community is musically, you know, the world of Christian music, would you say that evolution has in a way given rise to what is now progressive Christianity?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you're doing is you're vanillaizing, you're watering down, you're, you know, throw whatever, you know, adjective or phrase you want to add it to call it that. But you're taking a message and making it something that's palatable to people who could care less about being humble enough to accept it.
Right.
And that's a problem. You know, you hear, well, God has a heart for the lost. And this is super unpopular, what I'm about to say. But, you know, like, take it and do with it what you want. And prove me wrong, please. I'm not right about much, okay? But what, in my limited exposure, what I have found is it's not the lost that God seeks out and has a heart for. It's the humble. It's the people who will humble themselves in front of him. That's who he has the heart for, and that's who he loves. And so then you have to deal with, okay, well, isn't it humbling yourself to play something you don't want to play to get to somebody? Sure. That's between you and God. But I will tell you, if you cater to culture, because you're catering to culture, and look, I've done it, and look, my motives were secondary motives. And if we're honest with ourselves, we're just doing something because we like to do it.
Right.
I mean, let's just be real about it. And so, I like playing a certain style of music. That's why I play it. Mm-hmm. If you ask me to play, 80s punk, I can't do it.
Gonna have a bad time.
Because I don't like it. Some people love it, and that's great, man. If that speaks to you, that's cool, man. But I don't do that.
Right.
I like 90s rock and 2000s,
early 2000s.
Thank you.
There's a modifier there.
Iron sharpens iron, man. But I like that kind of style of stuff.
Right.
I like acoustic guitar driven stuff. I just always have.
Right.
That's what I'm going to be more prone to, and that's what I'm going to do really well. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to fit in this other, and so if we can honestly say that, it's not because I like that, it's because I genuinely want to reach, this set of people. Well, then there's probably going to be other things that you're doing as well. You're probably going to be immersing yourself in that people group's history and culture, and like some missionaries do when they go abroad. They study and that's all well and good. But from a music standpoint, from a CCM standpoint, you live in America. Mm-hmm. If you're following contemporary Christian music, 98% of you are living in America.
Right.
I don't see much in the postmodern world of K-Love going on. Right. You see something like South Africa and maybe New Zealand or Australia or whatever, but you're not seeing it in London. You're just not. You're not seeing it in Dublin. You're not seeing it in Edinburgh. And so, long story short, you're looking at it through really skewed, watered down glasses. Mm-hmm. And you can tell it in the music too, because it's very skewed and very watered down.
Right.
There's not as much. I haven't heard a song on the radio that I was just like, that lyric right there, I have to pull over.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's been a decade since I've heard something like that. And I think that speaks to how we follow our faith. I think it's getting watered down.
So what do you think, if I could ask you to kind of make a prediction here, because I know, the world of music is such that people like yourself who have been involved in it for long enough and paid attention to it for long enough, you can almost see what's on the horizon and what's going to be coming. Mm-hmm. What do you think is on the horizon for Christian music and how that will affect the church, do you think?
It can go a few different ways. We're at a crossroads.
Right.
We're at an intersection right now. Lights all around us, cars all around us. It's like sitting at the corner of, up here, right?
Yeah.
So, long story short, I think it has the potential. I'm not going to make any predictions here because,
Well, yeah.
But I think it has the potential to really contribute to the postmodernization of America. I think we're entering a postmodern phase, and I think what that really means is a post-Christian phase. I think it has the huge potential to do that, which I'm really scared about. And so the other thing is, I think it may have a huge potential to go exactly the opposite, to actually get some true artistry in there. But see, the problem is, are those people ever going to be heard?
Right. Are they ever going to get a voice and a platform?
Because now, for $5,000, I know that's a lot of money. Some people, it's a lot of money to me. But coming from where I came from,
right.
As far as being in $1 million studios recording songs and whatever, for $5,000 now, you can get a studio and produce something that's good enough sonically to be on any kind of platform.
Right.
That's a massive win for that. But the problem is the powers that be, who's going to let them hear anything like that? So my vision and what I would hope people like myself, on a massive scale, there's hundreds of thousands of me across the United States, or maybe more. There's a large population of worship leaders in this country. What I would hope they would do is look at their vocation seriously and answer the question seriously. Am I really needed?
Yep.
Is my job something that is absolutely essential at this church?
Right.
And that's going to look different for every church. But I'll tell you, if you go into a church on Sunday morning, music's banging. You're like, yes, this is amazing. And you go into the bathroom and you want to throw up because it's so gross. Who had the more important job that morning?
Right. Right.
Or you go to a church and there's no children's program and you got 4 little ones on your arm you don't know what to do with, and you're trying to worship and.
Yeah.
So really, is it so having said that, if it's not the most important thing, what is? What is the most important thing? And I think I don't think we can answer that for every church in America with 1 or 2 answers.
No.
But I think we can say in our own lives, the most important thing in worship is studying your word.
Yeah.
Straight up. And so my goal for our church, starting after mid-April, every single Sunday morning, we're playing we do 3 songs. We're going to take some time and we're going to read the scripture that one of those songs came from, either before or after that song, as to encourage people, hey, this is in your word.
Yeah.
Go look it up for yourself. Don't just hear the songs and have a good experience and go home and drink yourself into oblivion or beat your wife. Or,
right.
Go home, pick this book up and read what we sang about this morning. I think that's the very least that we can do.
Absolutely.
You want to counter what I think is coming musically and socio-geographically to America as far as faith. You do that. You start there.
You have to guide people kind of back to the word as a music leader. So kind of to bring that in, to bring this out of the world of CCM and back into the world of just leading worship.
Yeah.
Because this is something that I personally have experienced at a few of the churches that I've led worship at. Is that a job for just anyone? Or do you
question.
think it's important to audition for the praise team?
Oh gosh. You put me on the spot, man. So here's how I look at this. What is an audition?
A tryout.
Okay, so what are we auditioning for? So, my philosophy is, look, man, I'm at a country church. We're 250 maybe. Probably going to get bigger. Great. We're in a coastal retirement community-ish. Yeah. What talent pool am I going to be pulling from? When I was in Nashville, Tennessee... Mm-hmm. I mean, dude, the guy ringing up my Arby's was a better guitar player than me. You know what I'm saying? So it's okay, well, what are we auditioning for? So in my scenario right now, smaller church, very influential in the community as far as, we've been there 180 years.
Yeah.
People know who we are. If you can play in time, and you can tune an instrument or your voice or whatever. Yeah. I can probably use you.
Right.
Having said that, would I like people that are better than me around me? Absolutely, because I think it just makes everything. My ultimate dream goal musically would be producing it.
To be on the back end and let a band do their thing.
I loved that. You keep that up, or take that and then put it there too. Or
Yeah.
That would be kind of a dream for me, and I think most worship leaders would tell you, at the end of the day, they would want to produce some aspect like that.
Right.
Right now I'm a band leader, which is great. I still get some of that aspect, but you have to work with what you have.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you've got guys and gals who are volunteering their time.
Yeah.
They don't get paid like I do.
Right.
Right? I mean, I don't. I'm not making money.
Right.
You know what I mean?
but it's something you
look,
are
the
being...
lights and the heat stay on. Like cool.
Right.
And so, but long story short is, I want someone who's coachable. Because the person who's coachable, especially in music, probably has that repentant heart that I'm looking for.
That humility we discussed earlier.
They probably have some semblance of that, and I can work with that.
So that kind of goes into my next question, actually, is what do you think, what quality do you think is the most important for somebody who is leading worship or has been asked to lead worship, or somebody who aspires to be a worship leader? What's the quality that is most important for them to have in your...
Patience.
Big time. Yeah, that's a big one.
That's
a big one.
Take the most amount of patience you could think of, and then add 2 doses of long suffering. Like you gotta be, and the patience aspect, I think, adds in the humility part. It adds in hey, we're walking different paths.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got former computer analysts and a former cop and a current doctor and a current student at one of the private schools here and a current student at UNC. I've got all these different lives, man, that have decided, hey, I have something to offer the worship ministry here.
Mm-hmm.
And they all do an excellent job in their own way. We've got someone who's disabled who gets up there and sings and plays and does all sorts of things. I mean, it's so cool, man.
Right.
And so, again, I want someone who is not only coachable, but has that, hey, I'm here to serve the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that we've done in our team, just because of the COVID stuff, trying to get back on track with in-person meetings and stuff.
Right.
We never stopped as far as doing services. They just looked different from week to week.
Right.
In certain things. So some weeks they were online, some weeks we met in person, and but trying to go back full time on doing both. I've really encouraged my team. Hey, there's got to be something else you can do too. I'm not trying to burden you, but if you can once a quarter go and change diapers, or go and walk little kids to and from the bathroom,
right?
Or, something like that. That's a big deal too. And it's that kind of team. It's not just musically. The glory of making something just incredibly amazing musically is not appealing to me on that level anymore.
Right.
And so the cool thing is I can do that on my own with friends.
Yeah.
We can make a record that's what I want to do, and that's an artistic outlet that I can have. Not saying I don't want this to be artistic, but more so than art, especially in the worship world, it's how are you cultivating your relationship with your Heavenly Father?
Right.
And if we can make that our main priority, the music's not going to matter as much.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Even hymns and stuff to people in the Baroque era.
Yeah.
Dude, that's the devil talking.
Yeah, they were grossly modern.
Beethoven and Mozart was oh my gosh, they wanted to kill them,
So one thing you said is asking people to serve in at least another capacity.
Yeah.
If they're going to be part of the praise team, and I what I like about that actually is it inspires members of the praise team to kind of set an example, because even just as a member of a local praise team in a church, you do hold a status that's maybe not, celebrity status, but the rest of the members of the congregation do look up to you, right? Because they see you as a servant of the church underneath the pastor.
Yep.
And so it is important for you to be serving in some other capacity.
That's right.
And it's important for them to see that. because that's how you inspire.
Well, it humanizes.
Yes.
Like it takes that idolatry away.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
And so it takes any semblance that of you even acting like that.
Right.
Oh, it takes it away.
It's that supervisor who will get down in the ditch and dig with you, kind of thing, you know.
And if there's no one there and it needs to be done, then
somebody got to do it.
You're doing it.
Yep. So what to you is the goal and purpose of worship? Because that's a question that you get a lot of different answers on. What is the main, why do we engage in worship?
Wow. If we're honest with ourselves, again, like it's the dopamine hit.
Wow. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, you know, it's...
So backtracking, what should it be, right? What should we want to gain from a worship experience? I'm not saying that dopamine hit isn't nice.
Right,
like,
right.
That we're not arguing that. What I would argue, not you and me, but what I would argue with people about is, like, why are you here?
Right.
Like, what are you doing here? Right?
Right.
Adam, where are you?
Right.
Where are you?
It's an important question to ask, because and I think I've actually even heard you say this before, is in a sense it's setting the table.
That's our main job.
It's the most important way to look at it, because when you get asked, where are you? Adam, where are you? What's, why are you here? What's your purpose? That I feel is probably the most sane answer to give.
When logically speaking too, like, what was his sin? Well, he ate of the fruit.
Right.
Now you're setting the table for the thing that you can dine in.
Right.
And that you can taste. And it's his goodness.
Yeah.
It's not our knowledge, or it's not our own doing. It's him.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's key, man. I think you hit it on that. I mean, I envision myself on Sunday mornings when that timer goes down. You've seen the timer we have. When that timer goes down, and I welcome people, and I tell them, hey, it's time. Dude, I'm ringing the dinner bell, and I've got a towel around my arm, and I'm literally guiding people on, hey, we're dining with the king now.
Yeah.
Right now. Like, take your spot. You don't have a spot? Let me show you where your spot is.
Right.
Right. Let me show you the way, and this is your seat. He's made this seat for you. Isn't that wonderful? Have a seat, enjoy his presence. He's here, he wants you to be here,
Right.
And that to me is the ultimate job of not only the worship leader, but anybody involved in any kind of service on Sunday morning. I would even venture to say on Shabbats too.
Right.
Like, hey man, like, we are here for a specific reason. We are here to worship the Most High. He said he will meet with us.
Mm-hmm.
He said he would.
Yep.
So why are you here?
Are you here to meet with him?
Are you here to meet with him, or are you here to kind of get your touchy-feelies on?
Right.
And I think it's just an honest, and I don't say it out of anything but love. Like, I don't want people thinking I'm getting on them or anything like that. But it's an honest question. Like, if you, and furthermore, if you're here, like, where are you? Well, I'm here. Okay, if you're here, I need your very, very best. Mm-hmm. And that looks different from some people. But I need your absolute very best, because while he's made a way for you and a place for you where you had none, he still made you. And he still made everything that you see.
Yeah.
And if he chose, this could go away like that. So that's why I want your very best. And if you're willing to do that, or at least, I don't know what that is, can you help me? Yes. I'm glad to do that, because I had someone to go alongside me and help me.
Right.
Several someones, and so it's the thing where that's our most important job, is to set the table, is to back away from the table and say, this is his presence. It is something that you'll never get anywhere else. It's unending. You can have it whenever you like. Mm-hmm. Please sit down. And if we can do that as worship leaders and as people in bands, you see this culture, the CCM culture, you see it change like that. It won't stand.
Yeah. So we're at a point really where we could have a radical effect towards the positive.
If half the churches started really seriously taking on that mindset, this nation would absolutely change. It would be, in 5 years, you would not recognize this nation.
That's crazy to think about.
I think it is too.
Yeah.
But man, you got to be sold out to it, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you got to be willing to say, okay, well, yeah, it's going to take this. Okay. You know,
Yeah.
like, you know, so anyway, that's what I see as the most important job of a worship leader. That's what I see as someone's purpose in even playing in a worship band is like, dude, you got to sit at the table.
Yep.
You
got to prepare people to digest what's coming down.
And to be in that presence, man.
Yeah.
You know, it's not this good feeling. I can buy that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You can pay for it with fiat currency. That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, and if people got that, different place, man, different place. And I think one day, in His kingdom, we're gonna see. I mean, again, conjecture, but imagine, you know, we're in the kingdom, and King David has set the table for us.
Right. The one of the more famous biblical figures of praise and worship. I mean, in reality, that's who all of us, you and me, we aspire to be such a man.
Right? You know, like, I'm after His heart. What pleases Him, that's what I want to do.
Right.
And yeah, and again, I think that's discipleship. I think that, you know, you can't do this without desiring to become a disciple.
Amen.
You have to do that. And so, you know, where are you? You know, that's the question. So,
Amen. Well, thank you, Rob. I have really thoroughly enjoyed this. This is my first interview, and I think it's gone spectacularly.
Well,
so.
you had really good questions. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to, you know, anytime I can talk about this kind of stuff, I'm glad to have people reach out to me and stuff too.
Absolutely. We're definitely going to have you on again for
awesome.
sure.
I'm glad to hear it. Thank you.
And thank you for everyone who's been watching and or listening. If you're listening on podcast, this will probably appear on Patreon first and then later on YouTube. You can find also alternate media on TikTok and Facebook. Alternate spelled ALTARNATE, and then media. Thank you for listening, and God bless to all.